If you're a fan of Stranger Things, you've definitely asked yourself this question. Could any of this stuff actually happen? I mean, we're talking parallel universes, psychic kids, terrifying monsters. The show is just packed with these wild ideas. So today, we're going to dive in and figure out what's solid science and what's pure upside-down fiction.
So that's the big question, isn't it? Is the world of Hawkins, with all its secrets and shadows, built on any real scientific principles? Or is it all just brilliant Hollywood magic? Well, let's break it all down. All right, first up, the upside down. We have to start with the show's most iconic creation, right? That creepy, vine-choked nightmare version of our own world. So in the show, you know the deal. The upside down is this dark, decaying echo of our reality, and it's connected to Hawkins through these gates. Basically, cosmic shortcuts that let things travel between the two dimensions. Now here's the crazy part. The idea of parallel universes, it isn't just science fiction. It actually comes from real theoretical physics. Some theories in quantum mechanics suggest that for every possible outcome of an event, a whole new universe is created. Just think about that. It means there could be countless other realities existing right next to ours right now. Okay, but what about the portals? I mean, 11 just rips one open in a lab basement with her mind. Well, the closest thing we have in real science is a wormhole, which is a kind of theoretical tunnel through space-time. But here's the catch. While they might be possible on paper, we've never, ever seen one. And we definitely can't open one just by thinking really hard. Sorry. Okay, so let's move on from physics to the mind. We've got to talk about Eleven's powers. Her abilities are like the engine of the entire story. So how do they stack up against the real science of the human brain? We all know what 11 can do, right? She can flip a van, crush a soda can, and even spy on people in other dimensions. And she often does it by using one of those sensory deprivation tanks to really focus her power. The fancy term for this is telekinesis, moving things with your mind. It's part of a field called parapsychology, which looks into supposed psychic abilities. And the big question, obviously, is any of it real? And this is where we hit a pretty big wall between the show and real life. On screen, all it takes is intense focus and, a pretty serious nosebleed. In the real world, we actually do have brain-computer interfaces that let people control things like robotic arms with their thoughts. But, and this is a big but, they require a ton of external machinery to work. As for someone moving even a feather, let alone a giant van, with just their mind, there is zero verified scientific evidence of that happening. So what about those float tanks that 11 uses? Well, they're absolutely real, but people use them for things like meditation and stress relief. And while they can definitely put you in an altered state of mind, they are not going to give you superpowers. In fact, if you're deprived of your senses for too long, it can actually cause some serious psychological damage, which is pretty much the exact opposite of superpower training. All right, we've done physics, we've done mind powers. Now for the really fun stuff, monsters. Let's switch over to biology. Could the terrifying creatures from the Upside Down have any basis in our natural world? This is where it gets really interesting, and honestly, kind of creepy. The whole hive mind idea with the mind flayer controlling everything, it actually mirrors real biology in some fascinating ways. Think about how a queen ant directs a colony, or how vast networks of fungi communicate underground. And the most chilling parallel? There's a real fungus called cordyceps that infects insects, takes over their brains, and literally controls their bodies. Yep, real-life zombie ants are a thing. So yes, the concept of a parasite controlling a host's mind is 100% real and, frankly, terrifying. But there's a pretty major difference. In our world, these parasites are usually just trying to reproduce. They're not trying to open interdimensional gates so they can hunt teenagers down at the Starport Mall. So we're safe on that front. Probably. Okay, let's shift gears a little. Because beyond all the monsters and superpowers, what makes Stranger Things so compelling is the human element, right? Let's look at the real psychology and history that keep the show grounded. Think about Vecna. He is absolutely terrifying. And a big reason why he's so scary is that his whole method of attack is based on real psychology. He specifically targets people with deep trauma, with PTSD, and he weaponizes their own painful memories against them. And Max's defense, using her favorite song to pull herself back to reality, that is a perfect illustration of music therapy, which is a very real and powerful tool used to help trauma survivors. And that brings us to maybe the show's darkest and most direct historical link. The experiments at Hawkins' lab, they're not just made up. They are heavily inspired by a real, top-secret, and highly unethical CIA program called Project MKUltra. For decades, the project ran dangerous experiments on human beings, often without their consent, all in the hopes of developing mind control techniques. It's a really dark chapter in history. And really, it all boils down to this, doesn't it? This is the most important lesson from the show and from the real history that inspired it. When you have powerful scientific curiosity without any kind of ethical compass to guide it, the results can be a total disaster. So, after exploring everything from parallel worlds to zombie ant fungi, it's time for the final scientific verdict. What does Stranger Things actually get right, and where does it go completely off the rails into fiction? Here's the final scorecard. The show is brilliant at getting the core concepts right. Things like the real effects of psychological trauma, the biological ideas behind a hive mind, and, of course, the very real dangers of science without ethics. Where it flies into fiction is in the exaggeration, turning those concepts into literal psychic powers, actual interdimensional monsters, and machines that can rip open reality. And that's the genius of it. Stranger Things isn't trying to be a science documentary. What it does so masterfully is take these real scientific ideas and historical events and use them as a launch pad to tell an absolutely amazing story. It's science-inspired fiction at its best. Which kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. When you look at the science happening today, things like quantum computing, AI, genetic engineering, it's just as wild and full of potential as anything you see on screen. It really makes you wonder, what incredible stories will today's science end up inspiring tomorrow?